The Locked On Podcast Network presents the NFL Big 3 in 30. The 3 biggest stories in the NFL from our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. We bring you the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 30 minutes. The NFL Big 3 in 30 starts now with the biggest story in the NFL.
Could this really be Detroit Sack City?
You are Locked On Lions, your daily Detroit Lions podcast.
Man, what a time to be a Lions fan. What a win tonight. Detroit 38, Baltimore 30. We're going to get into everything tonight. The dominant performance. John Morton. Ben who? Benedict? Please. Johnny Moe's got the caboose? How fun was that? Hello? Fun. Defense stepping up, 7 sacks. Jared Goff not sacked. First time in like 18 years the Ravens hadn't recorded a sack. First time since 2001 the Ravens gave up 2 90-yard drives in a game. Lions had a 98-yard drive and a 96-yard drive in this game for touchdowns. David Montgomery back. That's Joe Adams' guy. Yeah. Monty, Demo, Sonic Knuckles. I don't know, whatever nickname you got for him. Just barreling over people. Remember after week 1, oh, the sky's falling. Oh, Brad Holmes. Oh, please. This football team is about to be, they're in good shape. Look at the schedule. Browns, Bengals, without Joe Burrow, Chiefs. Oh, but you got to play the Chiefs on Sunday night. Lions are 4-0 on their last Monday night games. On the road at night, bring it on. I love the way this team played tonight. We'll hand out game balls as well. That was an awesome performance. Let's start with the offensive line. That is where we have to start. And I was just talking to Peter Bukowski. That's right. For the Locked On Sports Today show. Let me tell you, the O-line tonight was awesome. You know, I really torched Graham Glasgow after week 1. Tonight he was playing hurt. I watched him going. I got texts from people telling me he was going into the medical tent. Mahogany, yes, the face mask was bad, but like Ratledge, Taylor Decker had 1 mess up. But other than that, Penei Sewell, watch the film. Go back and rewind and watch Penei Sewell just body people. That offensive line is nasty. And Hank Fraley deserves a ton of credit. He got some love on the broadcast tonight from Joe Buck and Troy Aikman. But the Lions came out tonight and absolutely ran the ball down Baltimore's throats. This was the Ravens, and I get it. Matabike's out, Van Noy's out. Don't care. The Lions ran for 224 yards. They averaged 6 yards a pop. David Montgomery, 151 yards on 12 carries, including that 72-yard run. Jahmyr Gibbs, 67 yards on 22 carries. Heck, throwing at Jared Goff, 6 yards. 224 on the ground to the Ravens' 85. Lions held Derrick Henry to 50 yards, held Lamar Jackson to 35 yards. The offensive line was awesome. Goff was clean all night. No sacks. And when Detroit decided to just play bully ball, including in the first half, that 98-yard drive that took up, was it 18 plays, 98 yards? Amazing. And that was some performance tonight in this game. That's what the Lions needed to do. Keep the Ravens on the sidelines, their offense. Second quarter, 18-play, 98-yard drive capped off by a Montgomery 1-yard touchdown run. That put the Lions up 14-7 within the 5-minute mark of the second quarter. Lions made some mistakes. Too many penalties tonight, 8 penalties. Didn't like that, but that's nitpicking. Offensive line took over. And that's where it starts. It starts up front. It starts up front on the offensive side, and it's on the defensive line. DJ Reader was everywhere tonight. He was awesome. Al-Qadim Muhammad, 2.5 sacks. Lions sacked Lamar 7 times. Like 30 pressures. Lamar Jackson could not get comfortable tonight. And we talked about it all week. And we knew Marcus Davenport wasn't going to play with a chest injury. He's now on IR. Old bit siren is somewhere in the background. 4 weeks at least out. But Al-Qadim Muhammad, wearing the all-white number 96, was everywhere. He made a stop on a play that wasn't even a sack, that was close to a sack. He was great. Aiden Hutchinson, quiet in the first half, right? Very quiet. Double teamed. Stanley, Rosengarten seemed to have him hedged in. Then all of a sudden, it makes a huge play to force a Derrick King Henry fumble. Lions recover. Huge play in the game because the Lions had 2 interceptions they should have had. The Brian Branch Brian Branch dropped 1 interception and DJ Reed dropped the other. And it was like, oh my God, you can't give the Ravens new life. But Hutchinson then came up with a sack later, and the Lions defensive line did the job. The Lions offensive line won, and that is the identity of this team. This team has been winning for now 4 years, this year and 3 years earlier, because they've been dominant up front, and they've been really, really physical at the point of attack. That is what football is about. We could sit here and talk about these quarterbacks and receivers, and the Lions have a lot of talent. Don't get me wrong. Kirby Joseph's out there playing on injured, doing all he can do. But you do not win if you don't win up front. Why do you think Philadelphia is undefeated? Because they are really good on the offensive line and the defensive line. You know, Lions special teams tonight was shaky, but they played through it. And to get a win in Baltimore against an elite team, that's a Ravens team that many people feel could be representing the American Football Conference in the Super Bowl. They're good. They're very good. They have so much talent. Mark Andrews, Zay Flowers, my gosh, to the 2 tight ends killed the Lions tonight. Kovar, whoever that is. King Henry, Bateman, D-Hop, all those guys. The Lions found a way, and they win 38-30. Losing streak to Baltimore, done. 20 years, done. 4 straight wins on Monday Night Football.
Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's a 401k or properties or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there is Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. I linked all my accounts to Monarch and immediately spotted a few subscriptions I wasn't even using. Canceling those all can save you money every month. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONNFL.
Lamar Jackson is being criticized for his role in the Ravens' Week 3 loss to the Lions on Monday Night Football, even by ex-players. But in reality, that's not really the whole story.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast.
So a disappointing night last night, but we're going to try to make as much sense of it as we can here, especially the morning after the game. Want to tell everyone that today's episode of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Let's just dive right into it here. And again, I talked about this on the watch along we did last night. We do watch alongs for every single Ravens game live, every single play. We react. I even said it on the instant reaction show and the Locked On Ravens squad show after that. Lamar Jackson in this game, there's a lot of context that's required behind his role. Now, let's just start with the pure box score stats, all right? Let's just start there. Lamar on the night was 21-27 for 288 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, and an 148.1 passer rating. Did Lamar play perfectly in this game? Absolutely not, right? there were certain moments, Brian Branch dropped an interception and there was a miscommunication on a couple throws. But for the most part, I thought Lamar Jackson played pretty well overall. Like, I thought it was a good game for Lamar. But the big conversation point has been the sacks. All right, the sacks. And they should be 7 sacks for this Ravens offense. Just absolutely embarrassing, inexcusable. And obviously, the offensive line was getting pushed around all night, multiple different instances. Roger Rosengarten, and again, the stats and the grades and all that haven't come out at the time I'm recording this for the offensive line, but I didn't think Roger Rosengarten played well. Ronnie Stanley got beat on a couple plays. Daniel Falele and Andrew Voorhees got beat on plays as well. Linderbaum had some moments. But what puts this all into context for me, PFF has charted that the Ravens, and I can't even believe this is a real stat. I legitimately cannot believe it. 30 pressures, 30, not 13, 30 pressures. That's the amount the Ravens gave up to the Lions. The Lions generated 30 pressures on Lamar Jackson. That is inexcusable. That is unbelievable. And it is honestly disgusting. Like, what does Lamar have to do in those situations? What can he do in those situations? He has masked offensive line weaknesses for years, and 30 pressures puts into context just how much he was dealing with. Now, the criticism for Lamar has come in the fact that he held onto the ball for too long in certain spots, which, yes, for a sack or two, I went back and watched the game back. In a sack or two, he did maybe hold on to the ball for a little bit too long. He should have thrown the ball away, or maybe checked it down somewhere, gotten the ball out a little bit early, which is that in itself is valid. But that criticism, I think, at least from what I've seen, has gone pretty far. And Chad Johnson, Shannon Sharp, they have the nightcap. They reacted to the game after the fact. And Chad Johnson said, Lamar Jackson holding on to the ball a little bit too long, trying to make plays down the field. That clock's got to go off in your head. You've got to know when to go. If you're not going to go, if you're not going to take off, throw the ball out of bounds so you live to see another play, you live to see another down. And that to me is like, fine, yes, sure. You can go out there and on a play or two, you can say, yeah, that was probably something where Lamar should have done something a little bit different. But the pressure was in his face all night. But then Chad Johnson says, but you're putting your team in unfortunate circumstances. You're going from 1st and 10 to 2nd and 18, from 2nd and 18 to 3rd and 20 something. There aren't many plays you can run from that point, and so you lose an offensive series. I mean, I'm it's not me trying to I'm just going to take this out and talk about this, but it's the offensive line, in my opinion, putting Lamar Jackson in unfortunate circumstances. Lamar even has to kind of deal with that. And the Lions were winning very quickly last night. And the issue is that the Lions were also winning with all different types of looks. And even late in the game, and Lamar Jackson talked about this after the game, the Lions were essentially at the end of the game just rushing 3 guys. And they were sometimes 4, and they were having a spy. Some of the best spy work I've ever seen on Lamar Jackson, by the way. The Lions spies, they knew exactly what they were looking for. But Lamar talked about how they were doing stunts. They had the spy was grabbing his leg, and it is what it was. They were dropping into coverage, had 3 safeties back there. So he said he's not going to just throw a Hail Mary ball. He's going to read the coverage out and try to make something happen. Lamar Jackson has made a billion plays with his legs, trying to make something happen, evading sacks, running out, not throwing the ball away. At times, and I've talked about this, if you've been listening to me on Locked on Ravens, I've talked about this for years. Lamar struggled at points earlier in his career with not just taking the short stuff, right? Not taking the short stuff. And, I'd said, hey, that's something Lamar can improve on. He's still young, and he's certainly 100%. It's night and day. But it's also about, can you, as an offensive coordinator, as a coaching staff, scheme guys open for Lamar to have that safety outlet and safety valve. Now, Chad Johnson then also went on to say, hey, the rest of the year, those aren't going to be sacks, talking about how Lamar's made those plays before. But then Shannon Sharp, he made the point, Lamar's mom last year, right? When Lamar was taking those sacks, he said, what did his mom say? Run the ball. And Shannon said sometimes he gets caught up. Yeah, we know you can throw the football, but they're dropping 7 in coverage. And again, I get it. I understand it. And I even said on the watch along, I said, yeah, in some moments, Lamar should have probably thrown the ball away. That's valid criticism. It's fair criticism. And look, it's okay to say, hey, Lamar didn't do this well or that well in this game. It doesn't take away that Lamar again, overall played well. Doesn't take away Lamar is, in my opinion, the best quarterback in the league, but not even Lamar Jackson is perfect. Lamar Jackson makes mistakes. And my goal here on the show is to be as fair and as just as I can. And look, there's plenty we can talk about with Lamar in terms of what he did well in the game. He and Rashad Bateman had a clutch connection all the way through the game. Mark Andrews gets involved. He and Mark seem to get things back. He was escaping pressure and making things happen at points. All the points, I guess, are legitimate when it comes to like the general points that are being made. But I don't think it's Lamar putting the Ravens in unfortunate circumstances here. I think it's the offensive line putting Lamar in unfortunate circumstances, which then puts the team in unfortunate circumstances, because literally 30 pressures is, I will say it again, 30 pressures is a disgusting number. It is a disgusting number, regardless of how you spin it, regardless of who was at fault, regardless of which offensive lineman lost. Tight ends were losing too. It wasn't just offensive line. Charlie Kohler was missing on some plays. Mark Andrews had a play where a guy got by him. Like, it is what it is. But Lamar was facing pressure all night, still went 21 of 29. And that to me is an important context. Or 21 and 27, excuse me. But still, I just don't want it to be the narrative. And I certainly saw the narrative on social media that Lamar Jackson is like all to blame for all of these sacks. He's the one running into this, running into that. And some of them too were just Lamar trying to tuck the ball and run, like eventually pulling the ball down. But Lions defender just got there too quickly. You know, the spy work I said was really good on Lamar. It's just that the pressure, there's so much Lamar has masked over the course of his career, with him being a elevator, with him being able to go out there and make something out of nothing. But at some point, you just kind of have to address that the offensive line play hasn't been good for 3 straight weeks. And Lamar still is out there without an interception, although, you know, he did make a throw that was almost intercepted by Brian Branch, and the Ravens got lucky there. Lamar got lucky there. But I don't want it to become a thing here where, oh, well, look, Lamar had a couple of moments where he could have done something better, so let's blame it all on Lamar Jackson, right? That is not what I want to see. It's okay to say Lamar needs to do something a little better here or there or whenever, right? That's okay. Lamar will be the first person to tell you he's not perfect. Lamar is totally okay with saying, hey, I need to get better here. I need to do this a little bit better there, right? Lamar does that all the time, so it's okay. He knows, everybody knows that nobody is perfect. But the offensive line is a huge problem. I mean, it is. We can just straight up say it. 3 weeks, there's still a lot of time to go. But through 3 weeks, the offensive line, I just can't get over that number. 30 pressures. 30 pressures. It's inexcusable. It's unacceptable. And when there's so much pressure in your face all night, yeah, you're probably going to make a couple mistakes. You're probably going to want to try to do something for your team. You're probably going to want to, especially as that game slips away late in the game, try to make some plays. But when guys are winning that quickly, when guys are looking that good on the defensive side of the ball, on that front for the Lions, man, it's tough in those circumstances. So it's not an excuse for Lamar to say, hey, Lamar didn't do anything wrong or Lamar was perfect in this game. No, I don't think he necessarily was, but this was still a very solid game for Lamar. Again, he had the 148.1 pass rating, and that doesn't necessarily directly correlate, but it certainly is an indication. And plus only 6 incompletions on the night. Now, again, yes, 7 sacks do not pop up on like the pure quarterback box score sheet there, but he also had 7 carries for 35 yards on those plays, and he had to tuck and run and scramble and do the whole 9 there. But again, Lamar Jackson, even though it wasn't like the best game I've ever seen from Lamar, he is very far down on that totem pole, is the reason the Ravens lost this game. And I don't think he was the reason why the Ravens were in these unfortunate circumstances. I just do not. I don't think it was Lamar. Guys can have bad plays or bad moments and not be a reason that a team's in an unfortunate circumstance. You know who does put the team in an unfortunate circumstance? The unit or players that consistently contribute to that. That was not Lamar Jackson last night. That to me was the offensive line and the defense and some of the coaching decisions. A lot. Lamar, certainly, sure, you can blame a little bit, but I'm not even putting him in that conversation, if we're being honest. And I'm seeing him put too much in that conversation. So again, the points that Chad Johnson, Shannon Sharp made here, in general, they are not wrong. And I agree with the fact that, yeah, on a couple of plays, he probably held the ball for a little too long, which is fine. He was trying to make something happen. And usually in a lot of moments, he does make something happen. But the narrative does not need to flip to unfortunate circumstances. That's what I'm trying to say on that. And it's something we'll probably see throughout the week. And that is, I'll say the word again, unfortunate.
The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for the weekend with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel because it fits how I want to bet in that moment. Player props, building a same-game parlay, or even jumping in live as the action unfolds. It's quick, easy, and the best way to add a little more energy to Sunday. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet.
Well, the worst possible outcome for Nick Bosa and his knee injury from week 3 now confirmed. Nick Bosa out for the year with a torn ACL. How the 49ers can overcome yet another injury in 2025.
You are Locked On 49ers, your daily San Francisco 49ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
The worst case scenario for the 49ers, who thought they might have been out of the woods for an ACL injury based on some post-game tests, pre-MRI. Now seeing the imaging, it is a torn ACL again for Nick Bosa. So we're going to try to go through, a lot of how the 49ers can, if they can, overcome yet another injury, what this means for the 49ers here, and look at how the 49ers have played on and when Nick Bosa is on and off the field as well. And of course, this is a story we're going to continue to cover here as we get ready for week 4 of the NFL season. And luckily, the San Francisco 49ers have banked a ton of wins, going 3-0 to start the year, despite all the other injuries they're dealing with. Is this the straw that breaks the camel's back for the San Francisco 49ers, though, for losing a player as impactful as Nick Bosa, who is not coming back, unlike some of the other players that have been out at the beginning of this season for the San Francisco 49ers. I do want to thank everybody for stopping in and making us your first listen every day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Make sure you're subbed up on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcasts, and get into the chat a little bit here because we are live and I see a lot of folks out there, a little bit worried about this, and I can see why. Croc and I, before the season, talked about Nick Bosa and how important he was to the San Francisco 49ers, and maybe the most important player on the entire roster, not only because of how good he is and the position he plays, which behind quarterback, I think your best defensive lineman, that stud defensive end pass rusher, where there are not too many in the NFL, are the most valuable players in this league. You saw why a team like the Cleveland Browns were able to beat the Green Bay Packers, who are a lot better football team, and why the Packers were so good the first 2 weeks, because of those stud pass rushers they have. And Myles Garrett, I think, was pressuring at like a 50% clip or something ridiculous in that game against the Packers. And so that kind of player is so impactful for a football team, and it can't go understated how good Nick Bosa is and how impactful he had been for the 49ers when he was out there. Yet the 49ers still were able to find a way to win in week 3, even after Nick Bosa left the football game, which I think is an important thing to remember as we go through this. And man, the 49ers have been able to overcome a ton of injuries so far this year. Nick Bosa added to Brandon Ayuk, who had his own ACL injury last year. Hopefully he's going to be coming back at some point. Looks good running around on the side at practice in the next 3 weeks, maybe week 6, potentially you circle, maybe by Halloween. It feels like he should be able to be back for the San Francisco 49ers, which would be massive for the offense. We've seen how good Ricky Pearsall has been in the interim, kind of playing that role as the 49ers number 1 wide receiver for the first 3 weeks. Oh yeah, and the 49ers starting quarterback out. Mac Jones has been able to come in and really keep the 49ers afloat for the last 2 weeks as well. It feels like Brock Purdy is going to be back at some point very soon. The suspension is now over for Demarcus Robinson. He'll be back and helping the 49ers receivers core starting in week 4 against the Jacksonville Jaguars. And really you start to circle that week 5 matchup against the Los Angeles Rams is a really, really big one. Will the 49ers be undermanned against a division opponent there? And is that where the season really starts to do you really start to see the cracks in that week 5 game? That's the big one. If the 49ers can get past that, you start to feel really good about where they're at. But at some point, you lose too many talented football players and you can't be the team that you are supposed to be. And so when it comes to Nick Bosa, and I think we all know how good he is, and as pointed out here in the chat, 2 torn ACLs for Nick Bosa. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that's 3 ACLs for Nick Bosa, because he's had 2 in the NFL, but didn't he have one like in high school right before going off to Ohio State? If I'm not mistaken, let me know in the chat. But this might be ACL number 3 actually for Nick Bosa. And that's something that I think we also need to look at here, because how many devastating injuries like that can one player overcome? He's still a young guy. He's still in his prime years, in his 20s. And you would think that a guy like Nick Bosa has a lot of football left ahead of him. But you've seen how injuries have really derailed the career of his older brother in Joey Bosa. And Joey Bosa, just not quite the same player he was earlier in his career. He can't play the same number of snaps he did earlier in his career. And he's a player that you hope you can kind of get into the playoffs by not playing a full complement of snaps. And you hope that that's not the direction that Nick Bosa's career ends up going, because, man, I don't know how many ACLs one guy can overcome. I'm not sure. We'll get more details, I think, a little bit later when Kyle Shanahan speaks. I don't know which side it's on, if it's the same side, if it's a different side. And so, number 3. It is the folks in the chat did say that, there's a number 3. So I was correct. His senior year, he was out at Ohio State. He didn't play his senior year at Ohio State, so I'm not sure what that was, but I thought it was in high school before. Here we go. Peter's got it broken down in the chat here for me, which year that was. So that was all the way back in 2015 was his ACL tear for Nick Bosa. He was a senior in high school. Then he goes 2020 NFL season. We remember that after the Super Bowl year where everything fell apart for the San Francisco 49ers, and Bosa's second year, he lost that year due to a torn ACL. And then now in 2025, his 7th NFL season, is his 3rd career ACL injury, 2 in the NFL, 1 in high school. So that's a brutal one. Yeah, his college injury was an abdominal tear. There you go. So Jam 18. There it is in the chat. So a number of injuries for Nick Bosa. He's dealt with some other stuff. He's come out of it, and he still looked like that dominant player to start this year, and was playing at that defensive player of the year type of level that we had seen from him before in the first 2 weeks of the season. And that's just not a player that you can say, we overcame these other injuries, we can overcome this, and you can just plug a guy in. I'm not convinced about that when it pertains to Nick Bosa. So to me, the question starts to become, okay, well, do the 49ers have enough reinforcements coming on offense and some other players, and the growth of their young defensive line and Robert Saleh putting together blitz packages? Can they overcome the loss of Nick Bosa and get through that this year? Or do they need to make a move? Do they feel the need to make a move? Or are these moves just a pipe dream when you see names like, I see Bradley Chubb right now in the chat, a lot of people talking about Trey Hendrickson as well. Maybe the 49ers aren't able to add that much salary to the books this year. Maybe they don't want to. They could probably afford it, but they like to roll over a lot of money, and that would really mess up the books for following years.